October 2025. In just 2 days, countless altcoins saw their value effectively evaporate, plunging by -70%, and in severe cases, by as much as -99%. Many of you believe the President Donald Trump's tariff announcement was the cause, but that was merely the trigger. The real reason was hidden deep within the market, in the systemic flaws of the DeFi protocols we trusted, and the structural defects of the market itself. Today, we will dissect the true mechanism of that catastrophic collapse, examining how billions of dollars vanished into thin air. This crisis was not a single event, but a perfect storm where 4 distinct stages aligned. First, the geopolitical shock of Trump's tariff announcement hit the market. Second, this shock led to an unprecedented scale of derivatives position liquidations. Third, it was during this very liquidation process that USDe, which was the heart of a specific DeFi ecosystem, collapsed. Finally, this shock overwhelmed the market makers who supplied the market's lifeblood, liquidity, leading to a chain reaction that brought down the entire altcoin market. Today, we will follow these 4 stages, one by one. The beginning of all disaster was the forced liquidation in the derivatives market. Following Trump's tariff announcement, a staggering $19 billion worth of leveraged positions, equivalent to over 25 trillion Korean won, evaporated in just 24 hours. To put this scale into perspective, the liquidation during the March 2020 corona shock, which severely impacted the market, was only about $1.2 billion. And the liquidation during the November 2022 FTX exchange collapse, which struck fear into all of us, was around $1.6 billion. This recent event delivered a shock more than 10 times stronger than the FTX collapse. This was the first evidence that an unimaginable amount of leverage was hidden within the market. What is even more surprising is the direction of the liquidated positions. Of the total liquidation amount, approximately $16.7 billion were long positions, betting on a rise. Short positions, betting on a fall, accounted for only $2.5 billion. The ratio was almost 7-1. This illustrates how extremely one-sided and intoxicated by radical optimism the market had become. Because everyone was using leverage to bet on a rise, when the sudden shock of a downturn arrived, there were no buyers or buffers to absorb the impact. Like a car with broken brakes, the market was structurally doomed to race downhill. Now, here is the real core of the matter. Why did a massive $19 billion liquidation lead to a 99% crash in altcoins? At the center of it was USDe, the synthetic dollar from Athena Labs. On the surface, USDe looked like a stablecoin pegged to $1, but its structure was entirely different. The problem lay in the recursive lending strategy, which allowed users to earn an incredible yield of 40 to 50% annually using USDe. The method was simple. You deposit USDe as collateral and borrow another stablecoin. Then, you use that borrowed money to buy more USDe and deposit it again as collateral, repeating the process 4 or 5 times. This maneuver multiplied the principal up to 4 times, transforming the basic yield into an astonishing 40 to 50% annual return. This yield, which is unimaginable in traditional finance, was not financial innovation, but the laying of a massive cobweb of leverage over the entire system. Drawn by the honeypot of this high yield, vast capital poured into this fragile structure, making the system vulnerable to collapse from even a small shock. And finally, the first domino fell. Amidst the market shock caused by the tariff announcement, a massive institutional account using USDe as margin on Binance was forcibly liquidated. The exchange's liquidation system, in order to repay the debt, dumped this institution's vast holdings of USDe onto the market at market price. This sudden selling pressure swallowed up all market buy orders, and the price of USDe instantly plunged from $1 to the $0.6 range. This depegging, the moment the value link was broken, was the signal for all subsequent collapse. The depegging of USDe triggered a classic death spiral within the recursive lending structure. When the value of the collateralized USDe plummeted by 40%, countless leveraged positions simultaneously fell below the liquidation threshold. The smart contracts then began forcibly selling the USDe collateral of these positions into the market to recover the loans. This automated wave of selling further drove down the price of USDe, and the falling price, in turn, liquidated even more positions. It was a destructive cascade of liquidations, precisely the same mechanism we witnessed during the Terra Luna crisis. How did the collapse of the DeFi ecosystem escalate into a market-wide crisis? Here, we must focus on the role of the market's hidden power players, the market makers, or MMs. Market makers typically stabilize the market by simultaneously providing both bid and ask quotes, thus supplying liquidity. However, in this crisis, they acted not as the market's firefighters, but as the accelerator of the inferno. The critical reason was that these market makers were also deeply involved participants in the high-yield USDe ecosystem. Even they were using USDe as collateral for their derivatives positions. Therefore, when the value of USDe plummeted to the $0.6 range, the value of their collateral was halved overnight. This effectively doubled their leverage, ultimately forcing them to face a massive margin call or a demand for additional collateral. Faced with a survival crisis, there was only one choice for the market makers: pull their capital out of the altcoin market where they supplied liquidity. To secure cash, they simultaneously withdrew all their buy orders that had been placed in the altcoin market. As a result, while Bitcoin and Ethereum maintained some liquidity, the order books for most altcoins became a liquidity vacuum, completely devoid of buy orders. This is the reason why countless altcoins crashed by 70% or more, while Bitcoin only dropped by 15%. In a market where buyers vanished, there was absolutely nothing left to support the price. So, why did this entire sequence of events primarily unfold around Binance? As the world's largest exchange, Binance was the perfect environment for products like USDe to grow. The institution that triggered the depegging and the market makers at the center of the crisis were all key clients of Binance. Because all this risk was concentrated in one place, a small failure at Binance was inevitably bound to escalate into a systemic crisis that shook the entire market. In particular, Binance's VIP and market maker programs created potential conflicts of interest. According to a Wall Street Journal report, an internal investigation suggested that DWF Labs, a major VIP client of Binance, was involved in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of market manipulation. Yet, Binance allegedly dissolved the investigation team instead of penalizing the client. This suggests that a structural problem may exist where the exchange might turn a blind eye to the risky behavior of VIP clients, who are a core source of revenue. Ultimately, this environment became the breeding ground where risk could grow unchecked. Now we arrive at the final question. A 70% drop is horrific, but how was an unrealistically steep plunge of minus 99% even possible? This phenomenon demonstrated a complete failure of the market structure. When market makers withdraw all their buy orders, a huge price gap, or air pocket, forms between the last executed price and the next available buy order in the order book. In this state, a single tiny market sell order from someone panicked could instantly cut through all the bids in this air pocket zone. The buy orders below that were likely placed at a few cents, or even far lower. The minus 99% crash was not a fundamental reevaluation of the asset's value, but the result of a purely mechanical process where all buying pressure in the market simply disappeared. This brutally proved the fact that the prices of countless altcoins were merely a mirage, sustained by a few market makers. Let's summarize the conclusion. The altcoin collapse of October 2025 was an event where a macroeconomic shock triggered the failure of a vulnerable DeFi protocol. This failure was then propagated across the entire market by overly exposed market makers, causing a catastrophic liquidity vacuum in the altcoin sector. And all of this was possible due to a high concentration of risk on a single exchange. This crisis has left us investors with three important lessons. First, we must always look beyond high yields and question if there is hidden leverage involved. Second, we must not only scrutinize the asset we invest in, but also thoroughly check the counterparty risk. Can the exchange and the key market participants where the asset is traded be trusted? Finally, we must understand that altcoin liquidity is a privilege that can disappear at any moment, not a right, and we must always be mindful of the risk of a liquidity vacuum. This collapse will ultimately force the market to mature. It is highly likely to serve as a catalyst for the introduction of strong regulation, especially concerning stablecoins. The European Union's MiCA bill and legislation being discussed in the United States already include measures to prevent collapses, like the USDe crisis, such as mandating transparent reserve holdings for stablecoin issuers. The market of the future will be an entirely new age of regulation, different from the past. That concludes today's story. The collapse of October 2025 was one of the darkest moments in the crypto market, but it was also a crucial event that taught us what to be wary of and where to look ahead. What are your thoughts on this event? Please feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. If this video was helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button. I will return with a deeper analysis next time. Thank you.